All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And online, all over the place over the last course of the few months, and to this day, because XDefiant is about 2 weeks away from release as of the time of this recording. I don't know when this video in particular is going to go up, but um, online, I've been seeing like there's some people out there that are wondering, how in the world it is that players could be excited for XDefiant and it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have this game mode. There's no zombies. There's no campaign. There's no battle royale. Blah blah blah. It's launching very bare bones and stuff like that. And those are all valid points, But at the same time, it's only one viewpoint. And what I am going to do in this commentary is respectfully explain, not just for myself, but hey, perhaps for other people out there that have a similar mindset and see what I see. I'm going to explain why I am excited for XDefiant and perhaps why others may be excited for XDefiant as well. Okay, so I'm going to start with the easiest way so that way you guys who might be wondering about this can see what I see. Okay, and I'm going to do an analogy, and no, it's not going to be a food analogy this time, right? Okay, so as of over 9 years ago, this channel here had its 9th birthday, right? I've been doing this for over 9 years now on here, and I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't start at some point. If I never started, and if I never tried, and if I never had a certain level of consistency with my channel, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Okay? And it all started with me just starting. Now, how does that relate to XDefiant and what I'm talking about? Well, XDefiant is a fresh new start. There's only been one other arcade shooter that we fans of the arcade shooter genre had to play. We only got to play. We only had one choice, and that was Call of Duty, right? And now XDefiant is another choice. And XDefiant is a lot like what my YouTube channel was. And that is that it'll start with 0, and then eventually it's going to grow and grow and grow with time. Things are going to get ironed out. Improvement is going to happen. Content is going to be releasing every 3 months. Actually, after the first 6 months, we're going to get into season 1, and then content is going to start building from there. The game is only going to continue to feel better because of the feedback and because of the transparency of the devs, which I'm really looking forward to, because also as a content creator, it's already kind of been known that the developers watch smaller channels as well, not just bigger channels, which is great, not just for me, but for other channels that are of my size as well. And with XDefiant, all we as the community of people that are excited for this game, all we've ever wanted is something to step forward and to try, because there's been no other game to even attempt what XDefiant is attempting to do now. Even if it is bare bones at the start, there's no other game that has even attempted to do what XDefiant is doing now in the way that it's trying to do it. Okay? Because it's a pure arcade shooter. Okay? And actually, you know what? Let me step back for a second and reiterate what I just said. I'm going to rephrase what I just said. It's actually been a decade plus since a game or a couple of games tried to do, to a certain extent, what XDefiant's trying to do now. And the two games that come to mind are Titanfall 2, which came out in 2014, if memory serves correct, and Battlefield Hardline. And both were great games, but unfortunately, they failed for one reason or another, or a multitude of reasons. But that's besides the point. The point is that after all this time, we're getting something that's a little bit closer to home in terms of what a traditional arcade arena shooter was. Because if you look at games like Titanfall, or if you look like Battlefield Hardline, those were actually hybrids. And there's nothing wrong with a hybrid shooter. And those games on paper sound good, but they're really, really hard to execute to make them be as good as they sound to be on paper, right? Like, and Titanfall 2 as a first-person shooter is one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, in my humble opinion. However, some people didn't like the Titan gameplay and they just wanted pilots, and there was only one pilot game mode. Some people didn't like attrition because they wanted a lot more pilots out there and they didn't want to shoot bots. Some people only wanted Titan gameplay, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? For whatever numerous amount of reasons, Titanfall 2, despite the fact that it was an incredible game, missed its mark. Battlefield Hardline missed its mark, probably, and again, I'm not a Battlefield person. I did play a little bit of it, but perhaps, like, Battlefield Hardline seemed to be trying to walk that line between being a Battlefield player and a Call of Duty player and trying to bridge the gap between those two. And I guess it was kind of like water and oil, and they just didn't mix very well in the eyes of a lot of players from both sides, whether you were a Call of Duty fan or Battlefield fan. But if you were both a Call of Duty and a Battlefield fan, chances are you probably enjoyed that game. But there's also a lot of people that are not both. So I think it was kind of mixed, but at the end of the day, it still kind of failed. But regardless of which, a lot of people will see between the lines. They'll say, "Hey, this was a great game, and unfortunately, it didn't deserve the hate that it got." And at the same time, you'll have other people that'll say it absolutely deserved the hate that it got simply because of this or because of that or whatever. And here we have a game called XDefiant that is, after all these years, after this decade plus of time, is stepping up to the plate and is giving us something in a way that kind of almost brings us back to the old days, but at the same time offers something new and yet different. Now, I will tell you, it's the subtle differences between the lines that personally has me excited about XDefiant. I like the fact that it feels different than Call of Duty. I like the fact that the game allows you to do certain things in subtle ways that Call of Duty doesn't quite allow you to do. And again, vice versa. Again, it's those little things that have the combination of those little things that has me excited, as well as the potential that the game actually has. Not just because of the game has tremendous potential, because over time the connection will continue to get better and the game therefore will continue to feel better and therefore be more addicted to play. There's going to be content and features that are going to be coming in the near future that is going to add to the replayability of the game and everything in between. And then there's the ranked version of it and the unranked and all that. We have additional factions, etc. We know what's coming, right? But the game in time is only going to get better. And when you have developers that are actually transparent and that are actually giving you also an experience to where it is not rigged with an algorithm that so many games are doing nowadays, it is a welcome experience. And again, like I said, going back to my channel, using myself as an analogy here, we all have to start somewhere. But the important thing is that you start, and then eventually you'll get to where you'll make progress or whatnot, right? So, and with a game like XDefiant, it certainly is going to end up being, potentially speaking, a game that could stick around for a long time. Because if you look at, now granted, again, I've never played CSGO, but I'm aware to a certain degree of its history and stuff like that. And that game has, kept its identity for like the longest ass time, no matter how old it was, and no matter how many other games did different things and constantly innovated or whatnot. And CSGO managed to remain to be a popular game, both in and out of competitive settings, for a long ass time. And I think the reason because of that is because it maintained in its identity and it didn't try to be anything else. So when you're looking at a game like XDefiant, it's trying to be its own thing. And this is precisely why I will say time and time again that this game is not the Call of Duty killer. It's trying to be its own thing, as opposed to trying to, quote unquote, eliminate the competition. It just wants to get in there to compete and say, hey, there's a new player in town, and hey, there's enough room for all of us here. Competition is a good thing. I mean, look what happened even with, let me give you a perfect example here, right? Look at wrestling. Back in the day, there were two major wrestling companies, and it was the WCW and the WWF. It used to be known as the WWF before it became the WWE, okay? And then eventually in the early 2000s, Vince McMahon bought his competition. Okay. And slowly but surely, wrestling started dying down. And then all of a sudden, there was like, what was it? What were those other AEW or TNA or whatnot that were formed or whatnot? And that kind of helped, or it played a part, whether you like to see it or not. It played a part in revitalizing wrestling again. And then now, in terms of where wrestling is now, in terms of they're partnered with the UFC now, the UFC bought them or whatnot. And then on top of that, you got The Rock, and then you got all this. You got like, you know, the PG era is disappearing, and you're kind of going back to like what the Attitude Era kind of used to be, but yet different in the year 2024. You know, if it wasn't for competition in the first place, and these other small organizations of wrestling being in the first place, I think that the WWE would have continued to go in that downward trend that it went to. So when they even created their own separate wrestling company or whatnot, I think, I don't know if it was as an experimental or just to offer something for different audiences. I think that was part of the reason that sparked like everything that where we are now in terms of wrestling. Now, granted, I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I am familiar with its history because I used to watch the living hell out of it, right? And I'm aware more or less of what's been going on. So now with XDefiant, this is beautiful right here. With XDefiant, you can still have a smaller game that can succeed and perhaps spawn other smaller games out there within the arcade first-person shooter genre without the skill-based matchmaking or engagement-optimized matchmaking, because it's sticking to what it is. It's sticking to the foundation, and it's going to try to show that, like, hey, guess what? You could be a small game out there, and yet you can still succeed. Right? You don't necessarily need to be making Call of Duty money in order to succeed and to remain relevant and to remain alive. You want proof? Look at CS:GO. Look at all these other smaller games. Look at the state of gaming to where it is now. AA games right now and indie games are like, they're basically like the top dogs right now in terms of quality of games that are given to us now. These guys are making some of the best games that you could play in the year 2024, which to some people would be shocking, but it just goes to show you that maybe you don't need the biggest budget, right? Maybe it's not all about quantity. Maybe it's about quality. Maybe it's better to have slightly less of a budget and slightly less cooks in the kitchen, but yet if these people are passionate and if it's run by people that actually like can make their ideals come true and they're given the freedom to do so, then you're going to have a great game. Who cares if it's not a AAA title? At the end of the day, it's about whether or not you're enjoying the game. And I, for one, enjoy XDefiant, despite its flaws, despite the fact that it's not coming out with, with an obscene amount of content at launch. I don't care if there's no battle royale, with all due respect to people that love that genre. I don't care if it doesn't have a campaign, with all due respect to people who love campaigns. I don't care if it doesn't have a zombies or a horde mode, with all due respect to those people that love those modes. I care about the fact that this game has a foundation and it wants to build from that foundation, as opposed to trying to be like different games, right? It's remaining true to itself. And the final analogy of this commentary is, it's just like you, like what you should be as a person. You know, imagery is, try to imitate somebody else is the highest form of flattery. But at the end of the day, you still want to be your own person. You want to be who you are. Do not be ashamed of who you are as a person. Own that shit. Be yourself. Sure, improve, right? If you see things that are wrong with you, obviously you want to try to strive and improve those things, right? But at the end of the day, you're gonna be you, and that's okay. So therefore, it's okay that XDefiant is doing what it's doing and being itself. It's okay that we had all these delays, right? It's not trying to be like Call of Duty, to where it's trying to release as soon as possible, right? To where it's like, yeah, we need to get this game out there now so we can start making money. Who cares how glitched out it is and all this other shit? No. They gave us legit betas. They gave us, like, we got a shit ton of delays because things that really needed to work, et cetera, et cetera. The foundation needed to be worked on. They got ahead of themselves. And instead of being cocky about it and just releasing the game in a messy state, they said, hold up. We need to backtrack. It's going to be painful. Fans are going to hate us for it. But at the end of the day, in the long run, it's going to be better for not just us, but for the fans as well. And that is why I'm excited about XDefiant, because of that kind of example that it's setting. You can say anything negative that you want about XDefiant. And to a certain extent, depending on how you look at it, sure, your argument might hold merit in terms of, the state of gaming now and everything like that. But at the same time, I think what I've stated in this commentary holds weight as well. So if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. That's great. But at the same time, here's the thing though. The game is free to play, and the game will always be free to play. So therefore, let's say you don't like it in the first 6 weeks, you can always come back and see after the game's been updated a little bit more, etc., and you could fall in love with it. Look at what happens to games within 6 months to a year. Granted, they get worked on. They can literally change for the better so much. And I think that's part of the reason as to why XDefiant got delayed as much as it did in the first place, because it needed that additional time. And eventually, in the long run, I think it's going to be better for the game and for the content that's going to be planned around it. And that's pretty much it, guys. And this is why I am excited for XDefiant. And I just kind of wanted to put everything in commentary form and share it with you guys, because over the last few weeks or whatnot, and even months so, but more now since the game has been officially having a launch date, it seems to be amplified now in terms of like, oh, why in the world are you guys so excited? Well, if they want to wonder why, point them to this commentary, if you will. Now, with that being said, I'd really love to hear your opinions and your thoughts down below. I don't care if you're a content creator or not. If you have something that you want to add on to this in terms of your specific reasons, whether you're just a fan or a content creator or whatnot, please feel free to do so in the comments section down below. And with that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.